Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Speedify Live Office Hours. I'm Alex. This is Kevin, the lead developer at Speedify. We are the people who make Speedify. If you have questions for us, you just pop them in the comments and we'll see them. So, hey to everybody out there. If you haven't yet, give us a follow, smash that like button, subscribe, whatever it is you see underneath or to the side of this video. That'd be cool, so you know next time we go live. We have been talking a lot here about Amazon Kuiper's new satellite service. So they are trying to compete with Starlink. They are saying they are going to put up 3,000 satellites to provide high-speed, low-cost internet everywhere in the world. Last week, they launched the first rocket that put up 27 satellites. They have a long way to go, but it is no longer completely vapor. they're 1% of the 1% of the way there. That's right. So we'll see. They say they have 80 more launches set up, like they have the rockets and they have the permission. So that would be 2,300 more satellites if I'm doing the multiplication in my head right of 27 times 80, rounding. Anybody planning to use it? Anyone know anything about it? So we'll talk about this more. They're being really secretive. When Starlink live streams all their launches all the way up to you can see them kick off the satellites. Amazon, they stopped the live stream 5 minutes in so that we wouldn't get a good view of their satellites. Bonkers. Another interesting fact. The head of Amazon, Kuiper, is the same guy who's the head of satellite design at Starlink until Elon Musk fired him in 2018, saying that he needed someone else in charge so they could go faster. And they have gone fast, right? Amazon has been talking about putting satellites up since 2018. They only finally got to it. And Starlink, they're doing a new generation of satellites basically every 60 days, right? They're going so fast. I think that more than anything makes me think they're going to stick around. Again, if you guys have questions for us, you just post them underneath and we will answer them. And if you don't have questions, tell us what you think about Amazon Kuiper. Are you going to try it? So, between two palms, we got a new video on YouTube where we talk about the Apple C1 chips. Apple has now made their own cellular chip so that they don't have to buy chips from Qualcomm anymore. And they've now shipped the iPhone 16e with it. Brian Purdell and I did a discussion where we talked about that chip. Was it Brian Purdell? Anyway.
It wasn't me, so it was probably Brian.
I definitely talked to somebody about it. Yeah, I think it was Brian. And so we talked about that stuff. So that's up there on our YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, you can check it out right after this. If you're watching us on Twitch, pop over to YouTube and find out more. So one thing I think about a lot with the Amazon Kuiper is what do they have to do to beat Starlink? I mean, Starlink, they're 5 years behind.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody who desperately needs internet in a place they can't get it, they bought Starlinks already. Right? So, I mean, if Amazon comes along at just as good at the exact same price, I think they'll sell zero. Right?
Yeah.
I think that if they're 10% faster, 10% cheaper, I think they'll sell zero. Right?
Yeah, unless there's something where Starlink gets too overcrowded and Amazon has more bandwidth available or something.
Starlink could choke on their own success if they run out of bandwidth. Starlink customer support is terrible. I mean, there are a lot of great things to say about the Starlink service, but the Starlink customer support user groups, people trying to help each other because Starlink doesn't answer them. There is way too much of that. I don't I feel like they have a lot of satisfied customers, but I don't think I've met anyone who's so happy that they refer to themselves as a Starlink person. Right? I mean, there are people who are like, oh, I'm an Apple guy.
Yeah.
Right? People are so happy with Apple's products that they think of themselves as an Apple guy. I've never met anyone who's so happy with Starlink that they think of themselves as a Starlink guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a game changer for a lot of people, but it has
its
drawbacks.
There are a lot of satisfied customers. Yeah. There are a lot of people who there was nothing in the market they could purchase. Verizon could not get them online, and then they paid a couple $100 to Starlink, and now they have a pretty darn good internet connection. It's not perfect. It comes and goes a little bit. But, a lot of these people, they talk to their local internet providers and they either ask for tens of thousands of dollars to run the fiber or just said no. And now they're online thanks to Starlink. Does Starlink respond promptly to their questions? No, they don't. But
yeah, I do wonder what the future of the space looks like. I mean, we're now getting into the first couple of these providers, but in 10 or 15 years, are we going to have a whole bunch of smaller satellite providers, or an MVNO type setup where they're reselling Starlink, or I don't know. This seems like it could get pretty crowded in the future.
All right, Zaphoid, President of the Galaxy, says, I remember when they said the internet will never have the bandwidth to handle video. You think satellite will eventually compete with internet providers in suburban areas? I don't remember anyone ever saying that the internet will never have the bandwidth to handle video. I mean, I'm sure somebody said it, but we were messing around with video in '93 over the internet. So I think it's the interesting thing. So a fiber optic cable, I think, will remain unbeatable. Right? I think 100 years from now, fiber internet is still going to be a thing. I don't think anything will replace that. I think the amount of bandwidth you can shove through a fiber optic cable is so absurd. And I don't mean a gigabit, which is what these guys are selling now. You can send terabits through these cables. They just don't want to. Right?
Yeah. Or they don't have the back end support.
Because you need routers on each end that can handle those speeds and things like that. But the limit is not the fiber optic cable. In fact, there was a whole interesting thing around the year 2000. The fiber optic technology was the fastest improving technology in the history of the world. Right? They were something like doubling in speed every 6 months. Right? I mean, computers were doubling speed every 18 months. But fiber was doubling multiple times a year in speed. And the end result was that all those fiber companies went out of business in the early 2000s because their products were so good no one could use them. And then they doubled in speed again. Right? Computers couldn't keep up with the amount of bandwidth they could send. So they were competing for who would get to 10 terabits first, who would get to 100 terabits first. But, computers were struggling at the time to keep up with a gigabit. And so they all failed because there was no one who needed to buy this hot technology. So we know we could go, if anyone ever started catching up with needing terabit speeds, we could put some engineers back on working on improving fiber optics. And we could get just speeds you can't imagine. But, you have to actually run the wire. And that stinks. It does stink, right? So I think, satellite internet's going to keep improving. There's so much bandwidth up in the tens of gigahertz, right? 12 gigahertz, 20 gigahertz, 30. At some point, there's a spike, which is the color of oxygen. Right, and there's a couple megahertz somewhere up there that you cannot use because the radio waves perfectly line up with oxygen, get absorbed. But outside of that, there's tens of gigabits. So if you don't mind this big dish, and big might only be this big, on your roof, I think they can have huge amounts of capacity, right? I don't think there's no reason they can't be beaming several gigabits down to each house that has this thing on the roof, right? So I believe in satellite. And that may be good enough for most people in the suburbs if VR doesn't take off.
Yeah, and there's still the reliability issue where satellites can drop out or get interfered by different things. You can't compete with the reliability of fiber. Really, it's if you have access to that. But yeah, maybe they have plans for making things even better, having redundancies that you don't have as much of these interruptions. But there's still weather and things like that that can
you have your Starlink, you have your Kuiper, you have your Speedify router. Oh, your Speedify router. You buy this puppy today at Miri.tech. You know it's got multiple badass Ethernets in the back here, right? You plug in a Kuiper, you plug in a Starlink. As long as either one of them is still working, you should be good. Although I don't doubt that a lightning strike can take both of them out at once, right? Snow might take them both. I don't know how. Do we know how snow does with it?
I don't know. I mean, I know the Starlink has the heating element for melting the snow, but I don't know about snow in the air, whether that...
Yes, if you guys haven't seen that, if a Starlink gets covered in snow, it actually uses its antennas to heat itself, to melt the snow off it, so that it can get a clear signal to the sky, which is really cool. But apparently it attracts cats. So the outdoor cats looking for somewhere warm find your dish and park themselves on it, and that's often worse than a layer of snow. So you have to chase them off. And I don't know that you can put bird spikes on, metal on top of the antenna. You read about the crows that are now going around looking for bird spikes, and they're using them to build armored nests.
Jeez, no, I didn't hear about that.
It's perfect. It's exactly what you would imagine. They pull the strips of the anti-bird spikes off the rooftops, and they bring them home, and they layer their nests that they have all these spikes pointing out.
Crows are pretty smart.
Crows are very smart, disturbingly smart. I keep reading those articles about how to befriend a crow, and if I saw more around, I would do it. All right. So anybody, you got questions? You guys are pretty quiet out there, other than Zaphod.
Are we not getting comments or something?
I guess we are.
YouTube, we're getting comments, but
we are seeing YouTube comments. Yeah. Seems like Speedify is on Twitch. I think everything's working. I think you guys are just being quiet out there. All right. So, rumor has it, Kevin, that there's a new version of Speedify coming this week.
Yeah, we're planning Speedify version 15.6. We're wrapping up some last minute changes to that and testing it. And hopefully by the end of the week or early next week, that should be available. Trying to think what notable changes are in there.
The jitter buffer stuff, right?
Yep.
You can set various ports to be jitter buffered. So this is a feature some other routers have. We haven't had it up until now. It works on every operating system. So if there are certain apps that need reliable timing, the important thing is that they don't have jitter. So a lot of live streaming apps. You can tell Speedify to set their latency to a certain amount in the jitter buffer thing. So you said 50 milliseconds. And any packets that come in before that, we instead deliver exactly at 50 milliseconds. So if your latency is jumping around between 20 and 40 milliseconds per second, you can instead set it to 50, and we will reliably, at 50, deliver them. So for games, this might be terrible. So you have to turn it on per port. If you're trying to get through just as fast as you can, then this might be the opposite of what you want. But if you are looking for just reliable, all right. Ryan has a question. What is jitter?
Yeah. So I guess first cover what latency is.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So when we talk about latency, that's talking about the amount of time that it takes for data to travel, over a connection or over the internet. So from the point your computer or your device sends something until it reaches a server. That's what we call one-way latency, but a lot of times we talk about latency around trip time. So the time for your computer device to send something reach a server on the internet or reach some remote server, and for the reply to come back.
So a lot of people call that ping time, P-I-N-G, ping, the time there and back, just because there's a program built into basically every operating system. You take ping space, google.com, and it'll tell you the round trip time. So people tend to call the round trip latency the ping time, because that's how you get it. Sorry,
yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so you're measuring basically the time for you to reach the internet and get replies back. And so generally lower is better. If you start getting above 100 milliseconds, that can start having an impact on performance. But so jitter is variations in that latency. So when you have a wired connection, they're usually pretty stable, pretty consistent. You usually see if you're running a ping or you're running latency tests consistently, you're usually getting pretty much the same result. Obviously, there can be some variations on the internet. But when you start dealing with wireless links or satellite links, there can be a lot more variation where you could see 50 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds, and then it's jumping around a lot.
A lot of cable modems, right, where the cable company runs a fast internet connection to your block and then splits it among all the houses. If you're the only one home, then it's reliable latency, no jitter. But when your neighbors get home and start watching YouTube, suddenly the latency will start changing based on what your neighbors are doing, and that'll be a form of jitter, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there can be all sorts of causes. There can be wireless interference or interference from other people on the network, or there be all sorts of reasons why that varies. But generally, jitter makes things worse performance-wise. If you're trying to get something through reliably and things are reaching their destination at different times, that can end up screwing up some of the the algorithms for the internet and speed and things like that. So a lot of times for having your streams, you want to send at a certain bit rate. You want those packets coming through at a consistent, reliable time, consistent, reliable performance. So kind of by buffering those and making sure that they're getting delivered at the same repeatable time, that helps performance and helps stuttering and things like that get eliminated.
Right. Cool. Anything else coming? I know that Mac, there were some nice little improvements with how it acts in the system tray.
Some bug fixes on Mac. I know there are occasional times where a couple users are seeing Speedify shut off at times that it shouldn't have. And we had some fixes with that.
iOS, it turned out that if you went in and out of the app really fast, which most people don't do, but I do. you eventually could see Speedify disconnect even though you didn't tell it to, just by going back and forth fast enough that it could have lost track. So that'll be fixed. I don't know if any of you have seen that. Hopefully not.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there's some other little bug fixes and things like that other users have complained about. I forget off the top of my head, but yeah, some good stability release, fixing up little issues here and there.
What else? So we got that new between two palms. There we go. Zavoid. If you add a dedicated server to your Speedify plan, would it reduce the chance of getting geofenced by commercial streaming platforms?
It can. It depends on the server provider. We have some. Depends where you're located, and we have some options for servers in the U.S. that are less likely to get blocked by some of the streaming services. So I mean, definitely reach out if that's something you're really interested. Reach out, and we can try to get you a provider that has that. But yeah, it really depends. A lot of those services just block hosting providers in general. Sometimes it can vary by IP luck of the draw of what you get for a particular IP address, but sometimes they just block a whole range of IP addresses because it comes from a provider. So yeah, it depends. But yeah, if that's something you're interested in,
there's some options. Talk to support about it. Yeah. I think Brian has some options. All right. What else? Yes, the Miri router. Just badass. We're sitting here working on a major new software update for it, but we're not ready to talk about that yet. So it's a high-end router. It's made by Miri, MIRI.tech. It's got Speedify embedded in it. So this thing is rugged, solid aluminum case, so you can take it on the road. It uses NPF batteries, which some of you may already have for your ring lights, your cameras. It has 4 Ethernets. It has 5G. It has 4G. It has Wi-Fi. That's 2 separate cellular radios. It has a touch screen on the front, which I mostly find useful for pulling up the QR codes to connect to the hotspot. Otherwise, it's a little small for my big fat fingers. USB ports where you can tether iPhone, Android, or USB modems to get more connections. It's a nice device. Yeah, so there's a Miri router.
But yeah, we definitely have a lot of professional streamers that are definitely interested in.
Yeah, it's a $1,700 device. Yeah. But for the professional streamers, it is a bargain next to some of the other companies, what they're trying to charge for bonding routers that don't work nearly as well. It is crazy. So one thing we don't talk about in any of our videos yet is the space junk issue. So Starlink sounds like they're very responsible. They send the rocket up, it releases the satellites, and then they make the whole rocket come back down. And they try to land it, and if they don't, they crash it into the ocean. And when the satellites are done, they send them back through the atmosphere, burning them up, so they don't leave any junk in orbit. But the Chinese are launching this new 1,000 sails constellation to compete with Kuiper and Starlink, and it sounds entirely like a complete ripoff of Starlink. They're saying they're going to launch 1,000 rockets to put 14,000 satellites in orbit. And from the first couple launches, they're just leaving half of the rocket in orbit, the upper stage. And the people looking at them are saying the orbits they're leaving them in, they'll stay for 100 years. So we're going to have 1,000 rockets that all of our spaceships are going to have to be dodging for the next 100 years. It is so irresponsible. I wonder, do they have any plan to will the satellites crash back down when they're done? The Starlinks, they keep a last little bit of fuel to, push it back down towards the Earth. Actually, I guess technically that's not what you want to do, right? To get out, the quickest way to get out of orbit is to slow down. You don't push yourself towards the Earth. You reverse thrust against the direction you're going, so you slow down, and then you'll fall, like the coyote who ran off the cliff, right? Yeah, it's crazy. I guess it's a fun physics experiment, that mental thing of, if you want to fly your rocket straight into the sun, what course do you take? And if you try to aim for the sun, you always miss it again and again. You just have to slow yourself down, and then you fall into the sun. But yeah, attempts to steer at the sun, you always overshoot it, because combination of gravity and momentum, and yeah. All right. Oh, improved Starlink stats. So we've got some Starlink stats, but I think there's some new ones coming, right? 15.6.
I don't know if that's going to make this release or not. I think that's. I think that might be the next release. Yeah, we talked about it, but I don't know if we've implemented
the stats. We found all the stats on the Starlink. It's more than any of you will want, but buried in there are whatever it is you are looking for is in there somewhere. So it seems really cool. Everything from the hardware version, the software version, and the exact orientation of your antenna, and it's fun stuff. Oh yeah. All right. Somebody else was pointing out to me that this bad boy is an award-winning router. I forgot to say that. At the National Association of Broadcasters, it won TV Tech's Best of Show and Product of the Year in the IT networking infrastructure and security category. So people are recognizing just how badass it is to, have a rugged router with Speedify on it. All right. Maria says, hi. Thank you for sharing the knowledge. Virtual hug. I'll give Kevin a real hug for you, Maria. That's what we're here for. Well, we're here to help you guys with Speedify. And failing that, we will just talk about whatever technology interests us until time is up. So if you got questions, feel free to ask them. They can even be off Speedify at this point, since we're not exactly fighting off customer support questions these days. Problem with things working so well. Do worse, Kevin. Yeah, the space stuff is really exciting. You know, this is what I expected as a kid, and I thought it didn't happen, right? But I thought, the 2000s, filling orbit with spaceships and stuff, and I kind of thought it wasn't happening. We're not putting people up there. Yeah. In fact, I dare say, we were talking about this. I think if I was president, the radical thing I would do, I think I would kill manned spaceflight. I would give NASA more money, but tell them I want robots everywhere. I want robots on the moon. There are caves in the moon, and we've never sent anything into one. Let's send a robot in there. Nobody's put a robot on Venus since the Soviet Union. I want to see a robot on Venus. Titan. It's like the planet. It's a moon, but it's essentially the planet most like Earth. I want to see some robots down there, right?
Yeah. At least have, I think, a mission going to Titan, right? I mean, it's not going to make it there for another 5 years or whatever, but at least going to have something that's going to orbit. But yeah, all the challenges of getting a person in these places, it seems to make sense that having robotics there would make a lot more sense. Give a lot more.
Oh, all right. So, what do the Starlink stats look like in the app? Asks Speedify. All right. I will show you. All right, so this is Speedify. Let's just focus in. This is Speedify, the actual Speedify we are running right now. So this traffic is the live stream going to you guys right here. So each internet connection has a different color. So I have Ethernet running to a Comcast cable modem. I have Wi-Fi going to a Starlink. The router's down here. We ran the cable up the front of the building on the roof. And then we're pairing and sharing over the Wi-Fi to Scott's phone to use his cellular. That looks weird, but I think he did that on purpose, playing games with his name, putting some Unicode in it. All right. If you scroll down, you can see the live streams. You see we're live streaming to YouTube and to Twitch. All right, 3 megs or so each. Jumps around a little bit. All right, but Starlink, because the Wi-Fi is on a Starlink, it changes to the Starlink logo. Ooh. And here are the stats we have now. So it shows you the status, which is normal, means it's working, it's connected. It shows you the downlink, the upload, 11.5 megabits total going over it. And the latency. The interesting thing, this latency is always lower than the latency Speedify reports for the connection. 57. Because they're just measuring across the satellite to the nearest base station and right back. But you have to get from the base station to the internet. And they've got, so Starlink has more latency there in those next couple hops. So, classic technology. They're reporting a number that looks good for them. But that really is the amount of time to bounce off their satellites. So that is the real advantage of low Earth orbit satellites.
Yeah, they definitely have made improvements in the past couple of years. I mean, when we were first playing with it, it used to be in the 40s or 50s, and now seeing it in the 20s sometimes is typical from what I've seen. So they've made some improvements with that. And so, if there's a whole bunch of alerts that we can pull from the Starlink about, if it needs a software update or if it's obstructed or a whole list of different problems. And so that status would change to show if there are any alerts. There's not any right now, and we would also show it on the dashboard on that row there if there's some sort of alert, something going on with the Starlink that needs attention possibly. So yeah, right now everything's working fine with ours, but there are occasional issues that pop up that will alert you about.
Just to throw some kudos to them. Look at the the latency, the jitter, the packet loss. I mean, there's a tiny bit of jitter, right? We were talking about jitter before, right? So latency jumps around by 2 milliseconds. Not perfect, but pretty good, right? The packet loss for a little bit there, I don't know if you saw that, there was 1/3% packet loss, but then went back down to 0. So the mean opinion score, which is this score that combines the latency, the packet loss, the jitter into a single score to say, could you use this for a voice over IP call? And it's a weird scale. It's out of 4.4 is the best score. So we call that 3 stars. It is getting all 3 stars. It is good enough to do calls over, and then it'll jump and get worse.
Right. Yeah, it's good for stretches of time, and then suddenly you can have breaks or issues with it, which is the challenge. Where it's nice sometimes to have a second connection to back you up for when the Starlink has those little glitches or blips.
All right, but Hooch the Fireman has another question. When choosing a server, is it better to use the one geographically closer to you?
So I'll say that depends where you're located. If you're in, somewhere where we have servers close to you, then yes, like if servers in your country, it's usually better. Or if you have multiple server options in your country, usually you get lower latency choosing a server closer to you. You could also consider, if you know that you're talking to a specific spot on the internet, like a gaming server or something, sometimes choosing a server close to that can be beneficial. So you can try both. But if you're in a country where we don't necessarily have a server in your country, sometimes the geographic closest location isn't the best in terms of the internet. The way different cables run and things like that, it might be surprising sometimes what the closest location is. So we'll try and ping a bunch of servers that we think are close to you. And
that's if you leave and just go for fastest.
Right, yeah.
We'll actually test sending packets to the 5, what we think are the 5 closest locations, because sometimes it's wrong, right?
But yeah, generally getting the geographic closest server is usually the best. But if you're not seeing good things, I would experiment with some other ones. Sometimes one that's slightly further away might actually end up being better. Just the way things work on the internet and run on the internet, or peering between your ISP and a particular hosting provider, sometimes there can be weird issues that a different location might be better. So experiment if you're not seeing things work well.
Other questions? I did mention that we were using parent share to talk to Scott's phone. Let me show that again. Oh, no, sorry. Try and get rid of that. Meanwhile, you explain what parent share is.
So parent share allows you to communicate with Speedify running on other devices that have different internet connections. Typically, we talk about cellular. So a lot of times it's your phones that have an extra cellular connection. So this computer doesn't have access to that cellular connection. It allows the phone to share that cellular connection over the local network, over the Wi-Fi, to this computer, and it gives another connection to Speedify. So we have our Wi-Fi and our Ethernet hooked into this computer. We can also, over the local network, over either the Ethernet or the Wi-Fi, use the cellular connection from another phone on the network. It gives an additional internet connection that we can use. And so we have another one that just popped in here. Somebody else on the
Google
network
Pixel
with
7.
T-Mobile.
On T-Mobile, yeah.
So this gives you a way, without having to physically plug in a bunch of extra devices into your computer. You can just, over the local network, access their cellular connections. So you need to have Speedify running on both devices, but then the Speedify software is able to communicate between them and route that connection to your device.
You know who we've been hearing a lot that they love it is the sports streamers, right? The people who are trying to stream a soccer game. There's no fiber out to the field where they are, but there's a lot of people with cell phones, right? And so rather than having to purchase some crazy thing with 7 cellular modems, you can have everyone there share their cellular to you and split the live streams that you can live stream the kids' sports, from the middle of the field, right? So that's a kind of cool feature. All right, well, it's 10:40. I've been going for 35 minutes here, so I think we're running out of questions. So we are going to say goodnight. So thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thanks, Kevin, for taking time out of your very busy day. Lads asks, what is Cisco's new quantum chip and how does it work for networking? I'll be honest, I don't know anything about Cisco's new quantum chip.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Microsoft announced a new quantum chip, and everyone keeps pointing out that they've released no evidence that implies it works. And when asked, they keep saying it's coming soon. And it kind of seems like they've wandered into a scammy situation.
Also, in regards to networking, I don't know that they have anything. When we talk about quantum chips, I haven't heard anything specific about networking.
I may have missed. I mean, there's the quantum encryption, which is kind of cool. You can use these sort of quantum entangled particles for communication, and a lot of people keep getting confused and thinking they must go fast than the speed of light. They do not. Quantum entanglement does not let you go fast than the speed of light. But one cool thing it does let you do is you can send the message in a laser. And if anyone listens in and observes the message, then it comes through scrambled to the other people. Only one party can observe the message. Quantum encryption. So if you get the message, you know that no one listened in. So kind of crazy. So that is a weird quantum thing that actually works in the real world. There's no way to intercept it and make it again and send it on for the other guy to crazy quantum stuff. It doesn't work. So quantum encryption is a real thing in communications. Doesn't let you go fast than the speed of light. That doesn't work, but it does let you send messages that only one person can receive. Which means if you receive them, you know no one listened in. So that is kind of bonker. The Cisco chip is for linking together quantum computers, so I know nothing about this thing.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone mention it. I'll go Google it later, but for now, no. Sorry, lads, you got me. You found a technology I know nothing about. Yeah. All right. So I'm still up in the air about whether quantum computing is going anywhere. I'm absolutely convinced from a physics point of view, they will work. They will work. I am not convinced that they will be useful. Because the nutshell of how the quantum entanglement works is that, inside this quantum computer, it can take every path at the same time. So it can do what in a normal computer might be a billion steps. If it's the right steps, you can do them all in one step. You can do all billion paths at the same time. And it's incredible. But every time you read the memory out of the entangled memory into the real Newtonian world that we live in, you erase all the memory. So you can't do operations on, you say, well, it can read through a giant database of a billion rows in one operation, tell you what the maximum is. But when you do that, you erase the database out of its memory. So then you have to load the database back in, which is a billion steps going row by row, because it turns out that's not something the quantum computer speeds up. So you're still back at n, right? You're at ON, because every time you do an operation, you have to read the whole database back in. And that can take longer than having an old-fashioned regular computer do a search, because it can keep stuff in memory in an index. So,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's certain applications where it makes sense.
There's certain applications where you have a tiny bit of data, and you need to do so much math on it. It's hard to imagine. And I only know of 3 things that fit that. 1, breaking encryption. So you try billions of passwords at the same time to see which one gives you out a message that looks like English. 2, the traveling salesperson problem. So these are optimization problems where you say, there are 50 ways I can go, and after that I got 49 ways to go, and after that I got 48 ways to go. What is the best path to, visit all 50 states at the same time? That fits a quantum computer grade. And the third thing is simulating quantum physics. Because everything in quantum physics tries every path at the same time and takes forever on a regular computer to compute it. But on a quantum computer, your data can go every path, and it ends out to be able to do it in sort of normal amounts of time. But as far as I know, those are the only 3 problems that anyone's ever come up with that would make sense to solve on a quantum computer, because everything else we do these days is huge. Big data. Big data is the thing, and quantum computers don't help with big data because they get erased every time you read out an answer.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it ends up being some sort of hybrid type thing. Similar, how do we offload stuff to GPUs right now, or offload stuff to specialized hardware? If it's some sort of hybrid thing where you have conventional computing, quantum computing, and occasionally offload things to it or something.
Yeah, I think that has to be how it works, right? I mean, you can't replace our computers to quantum computers. They get their memory erased all the time. So that needs a quantum coprocessor, the way computers used to have, floating point coprocessors, right, to do whenever they need to do floating point math. Say, traveling salesperson problem. Send it off to the quantum coprocessor. So anyway. Thanks to all the hardworking support personnel that put up with me. No problem. Voislav and Danilo and all those guys are happy. Happy to talk to you. All right. Shadow Squad. If I have 2 internet connections, can I assign one exclusively to streaming and the other for everything else? When I play and stream, my game gets a lot of lag. If it's not possible now, maybe future.
It's not possible right now, but that's something we could support in the future. Something we thought about, of being able to have rules of send your stream on one connection, and or bond your stream on both, and just give lower priority to other background traffic, things like that. We've talked about lots of different situations of having specialized rules. I mean, so right now maybe it's possible we have our streaming mode that will prioritize streaming traffic over other traffic, but maybe it's possible that it's not detecting whatever you're doing as a stream. So in that case, you could reach out to us, but there is the ability.
So I bet that is it. I bet it's seeing that you're streaming and gaming, and I bet we're deciding that the stream is so important that we might even be purposely slow down the gaming to make sure the stream is perfect.
So you could try turning off the streaming enhancements and see if that better balances things. Or you could put in specialized rules to make sure your game gets prioritized as well. If you're on the CLI, have a CLI access on
I'm not
Windows.
going to actually do this because the streaming enhancements are working great for me. But if you go click on the menu here, you scroll down, bonding mode, enhanced streaming recommended. You could try turning this off. For your special case where your game is just as important as your stream. Normally the stream's the most important thing. And if we don't realize, if Speedify isn't realizing the game is just as important as the stream because that's what you're streaming, it might not be doing what you want. So try turning that off. If you do turn that off, though, you do want to really make sure that other programs aren't also running. You don't want Windows Update or the App Store to go grab new apps while you're in the middle of a game. Streaming mode will help slow those down to make sure that your stream isn't messed up. But you turn that off, make sure other stuff isn't running in the background.
So if you do run that, there are options on the CLI where you can specify rules. If you know your game's using a particular port or IP address or domain or something, you could have it prioritize both your stream and your game, and then all the other background traffic will get deprioritized. So you could also experiment with that if you leave streaming enhancements on and add rules. But yeah, you could reach out to support if you want more details about that, or if you're want some help with the issue you're seeing. We can maybe give you more details.
All right. This has been awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I love how when I say, okay, we didn't get any questions, we're done. All the questions arrive, but that's fine. We are here for you. Cool. All right. Shadow Squad says thank you. So we are good. So thank you, everybody who listened. Thank you, especially to everyone who asked questions. Thank you to take time out of your busy day, Kevin. I know you are a very busy man who has a lot of people